Welcome to the Realty Plus Real Talk series. This is Sapna Srivastava, editor Realty Plus. And generally on this show, we say, veterans of the industry are here to share their honest views and opinions. But this episode is special because we have young architects with us today to share their honest views and opinions. Let me welcome Riya Patel and Riya Patel. In fact, they are daughters of one of the well-renowned Indian architects, but that's not their only claim to fame. So let's find out from them. In fact, Riya, you both have done graduation in architecture from Pratt Institute, New York. So my first question to both of you, what was your inspiration, or what was the reason, or what prompted you both to take architecture as a career option? Riya, let's go with you first.
Okay. Well, of course, like it was my early exposure to the profession was dad being an architect, and our travel. We really did visit a lot of places, particularly to see buildings. So we'd spend hours analyzing the way people interact with the space, or whether it's Paris, or we'd be looking at the Louvre, or Croatia or Germany. Just really understanding how the space impacts and architecture impacts the community and neighborhood. And for me, that was something that left a really strong impression, like knowing that, even after architects may not be there physically, their structures remain, and it can have such a strong impact on people's lives and on cities as a whole. And it was that larger gesture that really drew me to the profession. Yeah, that's my
That's true.
story.
The buildings remain long after even the architect. In fact, they say doctors can bury their mistakes, architects can't. So,
Yep.
Riya, what about you? Was it again like Riya said because of the early exposure to all influences of architecture, buildings, and that shaped up your career choice?
Yeah, I think definitely like growing up, like dad was always someone like Riya mentioned, he was someone who would always take us on these travels. And I think he just really ingrained within us this eye for like details and like to just like pay attention to like so much of like the world around us. And I think like as we started growing older, also we started to realize the impact we can have on like an architecture can have on communities. So like Ria mentioned, it's a larger gesture that we can contribute to. So like I think that was like just one of the driving factors. Like it was just how dad like made us so open-minded to like just the world around us and how we could contribute to cities and like communities. So it's not just about like building pretty buildings, but it's like actually something that can leave an impact on the world.
But you must have also seen it's a tough profession. It's not an easy job, So
Yeah.
and especially for women for being on site. So so was it not a deterrent kind of uh, a factor to consider? You found it
No,
challenging?
I think I've had a lot of female colleagues who have been really inspirational mentors here in New York, but also in India. Like I've grown up, like seeing people like Nina Puri, Seema Malan, and I don't think that gender is really a factor in the
Long
profession.
working hours and all, it didn't
I don't think
make it
hard
look
work is
like
something that Reha and I shy away from, honestly. Dad's
yeah.
always told us, there's no substitute for hard work, and both of us really strive to bring the best out of our project. Yeah.
Ria, same
Yeah,
goes for
definitely.
you. Not didn't get afraid.
No, I actually think that, I mean, for us, I don't think because we love what we do. So I think the hard work doesn't
That's very
really,
important.
like, we enjoy it, it doesn't, like, we want to put in those hours. It's not something that we have to do. It's something that we want to do. The
Yeah.
hard work or the long hours is something that we choose to put in. I think we
That's
don't
it.
see it as like,
If you enjoy working, then it no longer is work. So that's
yeah,
great.
definitely.
So now you both been studied in New York Institute. You are now started working also there. So how do you think it has influenced or shaped your own design perspective? You got influenced by yeah, many others. before, but what is your design philosophy or your design perspective? Riya, we'll go with you first.
Reha.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
okay. I think definitely coming to New York, it opened a different world of architecture, something that I wasn't necessarily that aware of before coming here, because when we came to Prague, they really brought in a lot of technology into the way we design our work. And I started to see how technology can really fasten so many processes and how it can allow us to generate new and responsive forms, which is something that I didn't really understand before coming to New York, because um, I just was able to see around me so many like new advancement coming on, because like even right now, I mean, in my first year, like I was still doing, they made us do a lot of like our work manually, but now I'm seeing like how they're shifting that so much into like the first years that come in now, they already do so many like renders and so many of the things that we like in our first year weren't doing. So I can see like, oh, in like a span of 5 years how much technology is influencing our practice. And I can see that happening even in our professional world. Like it's great for us to be able to, you know, consistently and continue to advance those skills that we learned in our education in New York. And I think that's something that's been really great to see and
Yeah,
work
what would
on.
you say? What's your design perspective? How it has shaped your
I
studio?
I know I definitely think like what Reha said about technology is absolutely valid. Like Pratt really did um, drive us to use new tools and technology that hadn't yet been adopted in the professional field as yet. Um, but also, I think being in New York, there's so much exposure that you get, whether it's exhibitions, galleries, going to having prominent world-renowned architects coming to give lectures and hearing them speak about their buildings. I think that also really shaped the way that I've come to think about architecture. But also, I think it puts a lot of emphasis on the performative aspect of buildings, being very environmentally conscious about the decisions that we make. So Reha and I both have got our LEED Green Association accreditation, sorry, and I just recently finished my WELL accreditation, because it really makes you think about buildings are, you know, for human inhabitation, and how can you enhance the performance of the buildings for people and occupants, and also be environmentally conscious. So I think it's the performative aspect of buildings that's really been instilled in me through my professional journey so far. Yeah, at PCF as well, I've been reporting all our firm's projects to see how our energy use of each of our buildings that we design stands on the spectrum of. So there's a 2030 challenge where basically it tries to have carbon neutral buildings by 2030. So each year you're incrementally supposed to have an energy reduction. And I've been reporting that for our entire firm's buildings. And that's been a very nice way for me to also have an idea of where this work that we do stands on the larger spectrum,
Yeah.
not just on the design phase, but also in the post-design, how buildings perform over time.
That's right. Sustainability, I think, and with COVID, we have now more realized how important it is to live with nature and in sync with nature. In fact, Ria, you are a Green Associate of LEED, and Ria, you are USGBC and IWPI member also. A lot of time, a lot of architects have said this, that we are over dependent on technology. Designers are not designing. Why not design buildings which are oriented as per the sun's movement, for natural light, ventilation?
Mhm.
We are over depending ourselves on HVAC. Recently I did an interview with an architect who said that our hospitals are heavily dependent on air conditioning.
Mhm.
So again, it becomes rather than on natural light and ventilation.
Mhm.
As young architects, you said you have been seeing a lot of technology being used. Do you see that factor? And we'll come to that question later. You have also worked in India on a project. Do you see, as young architects, you are using too much of technology in buildings, or probably it is necessary given that, the buildings are so complex now these days? What are your views,
Mhm.
both of you?
I think the way we've designed is like technology. There's so many aspects of it, right? You're talking about using complex building mechanical systems, but at least the kind of work that we've been exposed to is how we can leverage technology in the early stages of design, utilizing environmental data parameters, like you mentioned, the sun, ventilation. All of those things could be modeled in an early stage, and we can derive our forms and our building's orientation using technology. If you have those parameters set up, that's the kind of stuff that
3D
we've been
modeling and
exposed
things
to.
like that, you can test the materials and the directions, etc.
Exactly. You can
Exactly.
see the wind flow patterns, you can see the solar gains, you can see the shadows. Um, all of that can be tested in a very early stage, but it's about having those goals, and that's defined by you and your client, and having that set up early on. And then I think technology will only enable those aspects of buildings.
Right. Ria, you would like
I
to
th
add to it?
Yeah, I think so too. Like technology is like such a big, in architecture that you could, technology is such a big spectrum, but it's really like what exactly your goals are for the project and how you choose to use technology. Like as Ria mentioned, like we can really exploit it to create generative and responsive forms, which can help us advance some of the ideas that we want to meet early on. And so I think it's really just about that, it's about using technology to meet certain goals. I don't think technology hinders us. I think if we exploit it for the right goals, it can be something that can really help us. And it really helps a lot, especially with collaboration, because at early stages, we want to bring everyone in. We want to bring all of our consultants in so that they can be part of the process. So I think technology is something that allows that. And if they're part of an integrative process early on, it can actually be much more beneficial, because later on we don't have to deal with problems that come on, because usually that's where we see, because there's not a good communication, that there are constantly mistakes, or then we have to make big changes which can't be done. So it allows for that collaboration also, which is so important for
That's
successful
right.
projects.
Collaboration, I think one of the biggest point, a lot of consultants can collaborate. And as Ria said, that early on, if we set our goals with the client and then start working on the technology to take us towards that goal. So I think that can create a lot of, I think, material efficiency, resource efficiency as well for the client as well as the architect. So yes, rightly said that technology is an enabler, and it is completely in the hands of the users how they use it. um, as I mentioned that you also worked on an Indian project, which was your own farmhouse, and you were both very actively involved right from the designing and implementation. So, what is the differentiation you find working here with the craftsmen and the workers here, and probably being there on the sites in abroad? So, what was the difference? How was the experience?
Well, I would say because it was our farmhouse in Alibag, it was, um, a lot more organic, the procedure. If you wanted like carpentry to be done on site, it was a very seamless process. Like they would, the relationship was a lot closer between the karigars. They wouldn't have, like, they would just carve out a table if we had asked them to do it. But over here, it's a lot more regimented. Also, it's the scale of the buildings that I've been working on over here. I've worked on large scale skyscrapers and mixed use commercial campuses of hundreds of acres. So it's a very different scale as well to compare. Um, but I have worked on another project in India while at PCF, and that's the Lodha Tower in Lower Parel in Mumbai. And that's been really interesting. I've visited the site a few times, and it's great to see the way it's coming up. It's actually my first project was the Lodha project, my first professional project. So
Mhm.
it's been great that it's in Mumbai, and every time I visit, I can see the project shape the skyline of the city.
So,
Yeah.
Riya, how was your experience working with, the artisans and craftsmen right there on the site? and
Yeah,
dealing with them?
yeah. I think so too, like what Ria said, because like there was much more of like a not a personal connection, but it was like much easier to get things fabricated based on like our preferences, or to get things like that weren't just pre-ordered or something that was standardized. We had a lot of flexibility with that. So that was definitely one thing that was different. I also like recently when I was working at Woods Bagot, I worked on the Oberoi commercial tower in Gurgaon. So with that again, it was like a completely different scale, and we that like again we had to use a lot of technology because we were in New York and we had to deal with consultants and people that were in Mumbai. So that's one aspect where we use like technology, for the collaboration to go back and forth with the design process. So it was very different because in Alibag, it was our home. We were there, we could see the site, and we could actually like order as for like what we wanted specifically. But with that, it was such a larger scale that we had to think of so many more different factors, and a lot of it wasn't where we could put too much of like personal accents, or like we couldn't necessarily we had to think of it in a larger scale rather than the smaller detail and finer details that we did for the home.
So
Mhm.
I've been listening to both of you. For bigger projects, it's more or less the same. The way of working, more or less the same, whether it is USA or India. Is that so?
I think everywhere is different. So we worked on projects in Israel. I've worked on some projects in Denmark and Mumbai in America. Every place is different, and you really have to think about the cultural and the regional, needs of the clients. But we really try to understand and to learn about the culture. For me, of course, India was a lot easier to relate to initially. I didn't have to do as much research and background history. Um, but yeah, it is different. Every site has its nuances. Like in Jerusalem, we were working on a project where the code required you to have a bomb shelter inside the building. And that had really interesting structural implications for us because it essentially worked like a elevator core that ran from straight through the building. And each apartment had to have one of them. So it's a separate room inside each apartment. And so every place has its own nuances of how you deal with
So you
buildings.
both have worked on some very interesting projects, as I just heard from both of you. Any one milestone, professional milestone or educational milestone that's very close to your heart that you would like to share with us? Ria, you go first.
Reha or me?
Yeah, the
Me?
younger one. Let's ask her
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So most recently, I'm gonna talk about like an educational one. I just completed my thesis project this May actually, and so I was designing a 100-story skyscraper, but I actually wanted to create a new typology of skyscrapers because I wanted to see today's trends, and like I wanted to work with like and create something new, a new typology that could really help us, because usually when we think of skyscrapers we think of these like glass boxes, or which is like for commercial use or for like a hotel and mixed use campuses. But I wanted it to be something that can actually be a part of the community around and actually help the community. So what I did was I created a skyscraper that could serve as a warehouse or a distribution center. So what I did was I created a new typology of skyscrapers that could be used as a vertical warehouse essentially. So really taking advantage of how it could relieve pressures of congestion that exists in cities. So as you can see right now, even with the whole COVID situation, consumers are depending so much on e-commerce and online deliveries, and we have so many of these trucks that are overloading our streets just for delivery and packages. So by having a vertical skyscraper or vertical, and usually distribution centers or warehouses, they're usually in the suburbs and they're usually like taking over millions of like acres of space. So what I wanted to do was, what would it mean to have like a vertical warehouse within like a metropolis? So for example, I use New York City a type of, as like the first location where it could be located. So I actually allowed like freight and like trains to enter into the site so they could like bring the goods directly into the city, and how we could use like in the future drones to like deliver packages. So like using a higher elevation so that they don't cause noise, to the cityscape. So if they're located at the higher end, how they could actually like go and deliver packages, or how we could use the subway, the underground rail system also to disperse the packages into the city. So essentially what it would do is like rather than having a privatized skyscraper, you could have a building that could also have like infrastructure that could help relieve the city, and it could help the community around the area, because it's not only serving as this private commercial tower, but it's something that can have residential and commercial spaces that could coexist with this infrastructure that could help the city essentially.
That's interesting. In fact, multi-level warehousing now is coming up because, as you said, generally warehouses are further to the cities, but now they are coming near the cities, and land costs, for that matter, multi-level
Definitely.
warehousing are coming up. So that's an interesting where, you can have the transport of all the products right to the warehouse.
Consumer.
It's a skyscraper as well. Riya, what about you? What's close to your heart? Some milestone or achievement that you would like to share with us?
Um, Sure. So I had recently participated in a hackathon by Fortune Thomas Setti, and we had worked on a augmented reality application. It was like a short 3 day stint, but my group had won the prize for the hackathon, and it was really great because I had very little like coding experience. But we had the developers of Rhino, of Microsoft, all of them were the juries at the on the project. And it was really great to see that they really appreciated our work. We had developed an augmented reality application that essentially allowed stakeholders to have data right there up front. So you're looking at, say, a conference room. You can see the different chairs that are available for the conference room's design. You can see the price. You can see all the specs about where's the wood sourced from, where's the furniture, is it BIFMA certified. All the specs of the product will be given to you upfront. So that way you can toggle between design options, and it really streamlines the process of, as we mentioned earlier, collaboration between stakeholders, be it the clients, the lighting consultants, and you can leave your comments on this augmented reality site. So that was an application that we developed, and I'm incredibly proud of how much we got done in 3 days. And yeah.
That's very interesting. In fact, we'll love to see that platform becoming viable professionally, and we see that in the market. But I'm sure you both are, young and budding architects. You must be getting a lot of advice from everyone. But what was that one best advice that you both have got that you would like to mention? Riya?
Um, I think early on, it was like my dad who had said there's no substitute for hard work, and you just have to love what you're doing, and it won't feel like work, that Reha mentioned earlier. And yeah, I think that's really stuck with me. I think as we spoke about, the profession can be grueling with the hours that you put in, but you just gotta love what you're doing, and yeah, you just make it through
That's
and
the
do the
best
best
advice
work
which
you
has
can.
stuck with you all through. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you? What's the best advice that you have got till now?
I definitely can't think of anything else other than what Ria mentioned, because that's something that's so important, as we discussed earlier. If you don't love what you do, if you don't have a passion for it, you're not gonna give it your best. So like just keep doing what you love, and like everything you do will be great from then on.
Yeah, of course, dads always give the best advice. So that's that's there. Now, we've spoken about the work you have done, you are doing. What about future? What are the future goals? Where do you see yourself, doing, what kind of work you would like to be doing? Maybe next few years. Let's not talk long term, but next few years, how do you see yourself, your professional growth? What kind of projects you would like to do? So, what are
Mhm.
your professional goals for next few years?
Well,
Okay, okay, you can start.
Priya, you go.
well, I think for me, since I just recently graduated. I want to work on like different projects at different scales. I've done a few of that professionally, but I still want to get exposure into a lot of that before I can decide like what my specific passion is or where my specific trajectory would want to go. So for me, definitely for the next few years, I just want to get as much exposure to all of these different types of like technologies that we've also spoken about and these different projects, and really seeing how that collaboration can be enhanced and how we can advance that. And especially like even green buildings, like those are all aspects that are important to me, like sustainable communities and all of that. So for me, my goal is just to keep growing within those spectrums and seeing where it takes
The
me,
next few
really.
years is about self-discovery in terms of work for
Definitely,
Riya.
yeah.
Riya, what about you? You've already started working. You have already stepped in the profession. So,
Yeah, I think that being in New York, I've been really fortunate to have worked on projects across the world, and whether it's commercial or residential towers or mixed use campuses. So I think there is a lot to learn and to keep growing. I'd love to work on some cultural projects, like I'd love to work on a museum or performance center. Let's see, hopefully, maybe soon. But I think, yeah, it's important to just stay curious and keep learning. And that's what I really aspire architects and designers who have this interdisciplinary approach to their profession. And I don't see myself sticking to one niche of design. I'd like to have a diverse set of tools at my disposal. So whether it's designing a home or a large scale campus or an airport or I want to be able to shuffle between
so you want to
scales.
keep your life exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
It's like Thomas Heatherwick also does that, right? Like he designs buses in London, or he designs a chair, but he can also design a park and a building.
Correct.
So yeah, I definitely want to keep
Every
it
time
diverse.
something new to think about.
Definitely,
That
yeah.
that seems quite exciting. So at the end of our sessions, our episodes, we always ask, what is, because generally we have, industry experts on our show. So we ask them, what is your advice for young professionals? I would like to
Okay.
ask you, what is your probably what message you would like to send to the veteran architects, the architects who are already there, been there, done that. What would be your message to them, both of you?
Um, I'd say stay curious. It's never too late to learn. Even no matter how much experience you have, it's great to constantly learn from the things around you. Whether it's in the field or around the field, it'll definitely influence the way you think and work. And yeah, that's what I would say.
And hire young architects so that they'll keep you curious, I think.
Yes, of course, of course.
Ria, what about you? What's your message?
Yeah, I think as Ria mentioned, just keep being open-minded, be accept change, accept the fact that there's a lot we can still learn from, and there's a lot we can do to grow, and like it's never too late, to learn new things or like try new things. So yeah, just be
That's true.
open-minded.
Because like architecture, we say it's art plus science. So the art factor, you every day, there is something artistic happening around, and every day, science is changing, new technology is coming in. So we have to be on our toes. We have to keep experimenting. I think that's what the clear
Right.
message our young designers have given us today. So thank you so much, and for being here with us, sharing your thoughts with us, and we look forward to having many more interesting conversations with you both. Thank you, Riya
Thank
Patel
Thank you.
and Riya Patel. Thank you.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you
Thank you.
thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.